Pasuk Gimel. So Moshe is told that the objective of the upcoming plague is to increase my signs in the midst, and also to share with your children and grandchildren how I made a mockery of Egypt. V'yovo Moshe v'Aaron al Paro. Moshe and Aaron come to Paro. V'yomer Elov, and they say to Paro, Mosai me'ato elionos miponai. To what point do you refuse to humble yourself before me? Shalach ami v'avduni. They're speaking as God's agents. To what point do you refuse to humble yourself before me? Send out my people and let them serve me. So Rashi cites the Targum in Gimel, Leonos ketargumo lischno'o, means to submit. To what point does it take? Do you refuse to submit to me? And why is Leonos means submission? The root of the word is oni. Oni is a poor man. A poor man is usually naturally humble. What do you have to pride yourself? You have nothing. So therefore, by nature, a poor person is naturally humble due to a circumstance. So me'anto, the root of the word is oni. To what point do you refuse to submit? But it's interesting. He says the root of the word is oni, because a person's poor is shofel mefonai. He feels lowly. Because again, the Gemara tells us in Nida, there are a number of people who God cannot tolerate. Oni balgaiva. Person's oni, he's a poor man, and he has arrogance. A rich man, we understand his circumstance causes him or allows him to be arrogant because he believes that his success and his wealth has to do with himself. Most people believe this. And as the Torah tells us, it's the power of my hand, my own ability brought about all this success. But a poor man, Hashem says, you're a poor man. What do you have to be arrogant about? What do you have to show? What's generating that arrogance? If Hashem says, I cannot tolerate a poor man who's arrogant. Because a poor man, because of circumstance, should naturally be humble. This is just an aside. So Hashem is saying to Paro, we're already holding 6 plagues. I've basically reduced Egypt to rubble. The people are traumatized to a point where they're not functional. And yet, you're still stiff-necked. You're still not willing to submit. It's like the oni, like Hashem saying, we're amazed. I'm amazed that you're not willing to back down. What do you have to show? However, here it's a little bit different. We'll see in a moment. Now Hashem is reading him the right act. Because if you refuse to send out my people, I'll bring locust in your border. The Gemara tells us that until the locust happened, there were border disputes between the Egyptians and neighboring country. Where exactly was the border? When the plague of locust came, the border dispute was settled. Because Moshe said in the name of Hashem, when the locusts come, it's only going to be within the border. So no border is exactly straight. So when the locusts came and began devouring the crops, it landed exactly on the border. So the border was defined as a result of the plague of locust. Because Moshe said in the name of Hashem, Hini maybe moch arbe b'gvulecho. It will be within your boundary. There's not going to be one locust outside the boundary. It's only within the boundary of Egypt. The locusts are going to strike. V'chisas ein ha'oretz, and will cover the eye of the earth, of the land. V'lo yuchal liros es oretz. And what does it mean? It'll cover the eye of the earth. You're not going to be able to see the land. Meaning there's going to be such a thick covering of locusts when they come in. The sun, the rays of the sun are not going to penetrate the locust covering, so the sun will not touch the earth. That's how thick the wave of locusts are going to be as they come in. You know, it's interesting. There's a cemetery in Queens. It's called Union Cemetery. There's a very special grave there. People now go for a number of years. The first chief rabbi and the last chief rabbi of New York City, his name was Rabbi Yaakov Yosef. His last name was Joseph. The Rabbi Jacob Joseph School in Lower East Side was named after him. And he was the first chief rabbi and the last chief rabbi. There's a whole history of how they destroyed him. And within no time, within a period of 2 years, he had a stroke and he died because of the aggravation that he had from the people. And so there's a grave in this Union Cemetery in Queens. It's off the Jackie Robinson. And people go to his grave and they see special Yeshuos, literally wonders. People pray at his grave. So I was once in that cemetery, maybe twice. It's a very old cemetery. Goes back, you go there, you see graves that you normally don't see in cemeteries in the United States. Graves going back to 1820. Where do you see tombstones? 1820 in the United States. 1839, you go there. They have trees there. They're probably 200 years old. They're so thick. And when you walk down the roadway, the tree covering of those roadways, because of the trees, the sun literally does not penetrate, this is in the summertime, does not penetrate those trees. When the leaves on those trees, literally it's dark. In midday, with the sun shining, the sun does not penetrate. I mean, it's light, but the sun does not get through. So could you imagine, you're going to have a wave of locusts coming in, which is so thick that sun will never be able to penetrate. The locusts, that's how thick they're going to be. Could you imagine? And now they land. And in a moment, they begin devouring. Within moments, there's nothing left. All the vegetation, the trees, whatever was left from the hail is gone. It's destroyed. There's no hope for the future. And what Paro, the basis for his arrogance was, as I told you, his security blanket was the wheat and spelt crop. In a moment, like a blink of an eye, it's gone. So he says, this is how they're coming in. They're coming in, they're going to be so thick, you're not going to be able to see the ground. And it will eat the remnant that was left over from the hailstone. And they're going to devour the trees. Meaning, once they come in, it's going to be an arid desert. There's no hope for the future. We're not finished. They will fill your houses, the houses of your servants, the houses of all the Egyptians. There was never a locust in the history of Egypt until today. And Moshe turned around and walked out. He spoke his case and walked out. Okay? Seems to me this is like pulling the plug. If you people don't behave and wake up and you're still obstinate, Egypt becomes history. They're going to see a plague of locusts that Egypt has never seen until today. There's never been such a locust. Okay? Now, Paro will see initially, is, as I said, even when God hardens a person's heart and you become irrational, the person is not unstable. Hashem hardens a person's heart, is he going to walk into a fire? Definitely not. Meaning, even though there is an irrational way to see it, the person will see it irrationally. I mean, over here you have to be insane. If so far 6 out of 6 have happened exactly as Moshe said they were going to happen, the 7th will take Egypt, literally turn it into history. I mean, even when you harden a person's heart, how could you not submit? This is reality. If the 6th happened, the 7th is happening. And he saw that it happened. Something originally, like I explained, named the Orchaim HaKodesh, which initially they had believed it was impossible to happen because hailstones that are the size of meteorites, fire and water, all this. Therefore, only the one who feared God brought in his livestock and his slaves. The others did not. So we asked the question, or Chaim points it out, they're not totally irresponsible. These people, within the realm of reality, if 5 of the 5 happened, you don't think the 6th is going to happen? The answer is it's unheard of. When they saw what was unheard of happened, they don't think the next plague is happening. And we'll see, that's why the servants of Paro say to him, V'yomer avdi Paro elov, ad mosa yeh lonu zelo mokesh. Shalches anoshim yavdos Hashem Elokeim. How long is this going to be a trap for us? Send out the people and let them serve their God. Let them go. Haterem teida ki of the Mitzrayim, because before you realize it, Egypt is lost, is gone. Therefore, it's insanity what you're doing. Holding back, what do you have to gain? Egypt will be destroyed. Now, what did Moshe ask for? Moshe asked, they want to go for 3 days into the desert to worship their God. They're not asking to leave forever. So according to Moshe's pitch, so to say, we're slaves, we want a 3-day break, we're coming back. So us leaving is not going to put the economy of Egypt in jeopardy, because we're coming back. Evidently, Paro didn't trust them. Because if they leave, he believes they're not coming back. If they come back, in either regard, Egypt is history. Because without the financial, especially now that they've been destroyed and been reduced to rubble, the only way they could recover is only by retaining the Jews there. And they tell me if they're going for 3 days in the desert, they're going for more than 3 days in the desert. That's what Paro is holding back over here. So his servants, his inner circle, say to him, let the men go. They said, Shalach es hanoshim. They didn't say send out all of them. Let the men go and let them serve their God. Before you know, Egypt is gone. Second. So Paro now is reconsidering based on the new approach, which his inner circle had presented. Yushav is Moshe is Aaron al Paro. V'yomer aleim. L'chu ivdus Hashem. And they said, you can go serve your God. Hashem Elokecha. Mi v'mi ha'olchim. Who's going? Now this is the litmus test. If you want to go temporarily, to go for 3 days to serve your God, who is going? V'yomer Moshe. We're going with our youth, with our elderly, with our sons and our daughters, with our sheep and our cattle. Because when you go celebrate, we celebrate the whole family and we take all our possessions. That's the way you celebrate. Now, as I said, Paro's no fool. This over here confirms Paro's suspicion that when they leave, they're not coming back. Because we'll see in a moment, because he's going to say to them, if you want to go worship your God, what do you take children with you? The adults go. What do you take all your possessions with you? So Moshe says, yeah, because it's a celebration, it's a holiday. When the holiday happens, we take everything. Paro's no fool. He's not going to sell him this bill of goods. So this confirms Paro's suspicion that if they leave, they're not coming back. So the question is, but what's the alternative? His inner circle says, but Egypt is lost. If the locusts come and they devour all the vegetation, we're history. We're not going to recover. Even if we have the slaves, we're not going to recover. But at this point, that it didn't happen yet, as they say in English, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. Right now, Egypt is intact. We let the Jews go. There's not even a chance. I'll take a chance. Because this is all or nothing over here. Okay? So he's asked, Vayomer Aleim, Yikein Hashem imochem, Kasher Shalach eschem, Vestapechem. So you see clearly, when Moshe said our sons and daughters, it doesn't mean adults. He meant even young children. Because Paro was responding now, do you think I'm going to send out you and your children, young children, tapchem, young children? What do young children have to worshiping God? It has nothing to do with it. Ru'u ki ra neged penechem. So he's saying two things. Let God be with you when I will send you out with your children, meaning there's no way I'm sending you out because it's clear, if you're asking that your children should go, it's clear you're not going to worship your God. You're going to leave and not come back. Secondly, Ru'u ki ra neged penechem. So Rashi over here, famous Rashi, Paro was an expert astrologer. He had seen in his astrology the red star that the Jews ultimately they're destined to be killed in the desert. If you want to be a free people is one thing, but if you're going into the desert to die, I'm not even for yourselves. It's just it's foolishness. Firstly, you're deceiving me. Secondly, even for yourselves, ultimately, you're doomed in the desert. Of course, I see bloodshed. That you people are going to be killed in the desert. So for those two reasons, there's no way I'm letting you go. Okay? It's very interesting. The second thing he said, Rashi himself cites the famous Medrash, after the Chet Egel, we were meant to be killed. Hashem says, allow me to destroy them. Meant that's bloodshed. Because of Moshe's tefillah, he overturned it. But initially, so Rashi says, but ultimately, because the Zodiac says it blood, ultimately, where was it fulfilled? Because when the Jews came into Canaan, for 40 years they were not circumcised. After the Chet HaMeraglim, the Jews were not circumcised. So the blood of the Milah was the blood that he had seen. Initially, blood meant bloodshed. They were meant to be killed after the Chet Egel, Chet HaMeraglim. But because of Moshe's tefillah, they were not. Right? They perished over a 40-year period. But during that 40-year period, they were not circumcised. Before they went into Eretz Yisrael, Yeshua circumcised them. So the blood of the Milah, that's the dam, that's the blood he saw in the Zodiac. Comes up very interesting. We say 80, there's something I just thought about this moment. 80% of the Jews perished during the days of darkness. Why did they perish? Because they weren't willing to go out into the desert. Why weren't they willing to go out? So the pasuk says, "Chati lo chesed orayich, chesed avos kolosayich, lechtech acher b'midbar be'eretz lo zerua." You went into an uncharted desert without any material, without provisions. You know what level of faith you have to have? Phenomenal level of faith. So the 20% who went out, they had that level of faith. And the Torah makes it a point that there were no provisions. Rashi later at the end of Pasha makes this point, that although they had no provisions, they went out into the desert. But we have an added point, because here Paro says, When you go into the desert, I see bloodshed. That's what Paro said. Paro was an expert astrologer. So if the Jews hear that there's bloodshed, it's bad enough we're going out where there's no food. So he said we have faith. But even they have faith, but the Tsar says there's going to be bloodshed. So it doesn't make any sense. To have faith that although there's no food, no provisions, and in addition, the stars say bloodshed. It's suicide. So the 80%, so it was compounded. Firstly, you have to have a special level of faith to go into a desert where there are no provisions being provided. In addition, now they see and they hear that the expert astrologers say, the stars say bloodshed. So where are we going? You know something? We're staying home. We're not leaving Egypt. The 20% who left, they went blindly, meaning that blind faith in Hashem. Hashem says you people are going to survive. It's irrelevant what the Zodiac says. It's irrelevant that there's no provisions. Hashem will provide, nothing to worry about. So therefore, this only increases the dimension of trust and faith that the Jews had, the 20% had, who went into the desert. Yeah, this adds a piece.